Hey guys, I'm going to be showing you how to get an okay-ish score on Dark Kokuryu if you don't happen to have any of like the meta units in the current game. We're going to use Golden Rizer for a pretty good score overall. This does rely on a little bit of RNG, especially because you have to even have a Golden Rizer, and he really wants to be EX2, which is pure luck of the draw. Global changed the way the Riser box works, so it's completely random whether you'll get even Riser at all before this event is or this Dark Visions is over. But if you did happen to get him to EX2, here's a way to use him to basically solo carry the damage on Dark Kokuryu. Now, credit to this idea goes to Dream for coming up with the idea, and Sycidus for figuring out the exact chain framing for counter units. But we're going to use Riser to counter and destroy Dark Kokuryu and get a decent damage cap. So based on perfect variance, based on what I'm using, this can get up to like 13.5 billion, but that's like perfect variance. So to start off, we're going to use Bulwark to do Imperil on the enemy. We're going to use Bart in the shift form to Raging Winds to give AR frames to the party. We're going to use Golden Rizer to store power. We're going to use Lightning for a Thunder Resist boost. And then Sage of Thunder Secure with dual wield is going to use Wind's Wake, and so is Venera. And we're going to chain these up for that chain count score. Now, if you can't chain AR, just figure a different way to chain. There's a bunch of, you could chain single cast AR with 4 different units on a different turn. Not really, because actually we need a dual wield on most units. Anyway, there's ways to do it for the chain count score. Get the chain count score some kind of way. So we're going to reload Bulwark, just Imperil from an Esper. He's provoking, by the way, with 100 ice resist. Golden Rizer is going to store power. Now Venera is going to manufacture Nethicite to absorb the boss's attack. We're going to put Bart on 1,000 Needles. We'll just do Rising Thunder again with whoever that was, and we'll just guard. Okay, so next is going to be, let's see here, what are we doing? Reload. Reload this, reload that, turn 3. Yeah, everyone can just reload here. Okay. And some attacks. We Mirage them and Nethicite them. Turn 4, more of the same. So we're going to Imperil with Bulwark, Focus with Riser. Venera is going to manufacture Nethicite. Bart will Mirage. This turn, Lightning is going to do Thunderfall. If you have it, if you don't, use the best Thunder Imperil you have. I think it's 120 on her. And then turn 4, Secura can continue to guard. Okay. More attacks. Okay, turn 5. We're going to do Imperil again. Riser can focus again. This turn, Venera needs to Marauder's Blade for the 90% defense break. We're going to use Lightning to gun target. That's going to gun Imperil. Bart's can Needles. And this turn, we're going to shift, and we're going to do Elemental Rising, the shifted LB of Secura. Now, that doesn't do any kind of Amplify on Riser. Amplifies don't work on Riser, but it does give him a 350% attack buff. Now, we did take damage there. That's not important because the chain. As long as you take less than 5,000, you're fine. So turn 6 is going to be our kill turn. We're going to reload. Riser is going to do his store power. Bart's going to do his Nethicite. We're going to use Secura to put up that Ramu field so the boss takes extra thunder damage. We're going to use Lightning to AoE imbue the party with Lightning. We're going to use Venera to Nethicite the attack again this turn. Now here's the key thing. On turn 6, the boss is going to AoE physical. We're going to use Bulwark to Tonberry Boogie. That's going to give a 15x modifier counter to Riser. Riser currently has 44,000 attack power buff from storing, which we're going to use on that 15x modifier of Bulwark. It's considered a normal attack. Normal attacks can critical. It's going to deal critical damage, so it's actually a 22.5 times modifier attack. Now, that seems pretty good, because it's a 44,000 attack power buff, but we need to also cap the chain. Tonberry Boogie is going to let us cap that chain. So we're going to counterattack the bosses, and Siced has figured out units that will properly chain counter to cap Golden Rizer. That would be the Brave Shifted Warrior of Light's Bartz and the Brave Shifted original Neovision's Awakened Lightning. They are both using Poppy's STMR and a Dark Weapon to 8-element chain to cap the Riser. Everyone else is using as many elements as I can fit on them as possible. Okay, so if you have the Silver Rifle, a like 5-year-old event gun, this is fine. You don't have to worry about RNG. I don't have it like a dummy. I sold it. I'm never selling event gear again. I think that's the last of that's going to happen because it came back to bite me. So I have to rely on some RNG for my criticals. Also, we need to rely on RNG for the variants, the two-handed weapon. So I'm going to pause the video and come back when I get a critical that also rolls high on variants. So see you when that happens. Okay, guys. First attempt. Hopefully we can get a nice crit here, a decent roll, and I don't gotta continue to do this. So let's see what happens here. We Nethicite that. There's the physical, and we countered. Okay. That seemed like a pretty decent roll, so we'll see what kind of damage we did. It seemed like the first try. I didn't even have to cut the video. Let's see what kind of damage that did. Duh. Yeah. You don't see the damage because we killed it with a counterattack. We'll see it in the damage breakdown in a second, and our damage score. So we got a perfect score on everything. Here's the damage breakdown, 12.6. So if you saw my previous video where I used, like a ton of premium units, 500 STMR, limited units like Lara Croft and all that, and you're like, I can't replicate that. Well, this doesn't score quite as high as that video did. But we did a 12.6 with a free unit. That's pretty good. And you can even do better if you have things like the Silver Rifle, that I'm kicking myself for selling that Silver Rifle. I'm never selling gear ever again in this entire game. Ever. So, yeah, perfect score. I think my max score with my, incredibly expensive team was 1.6. Yeah, I almost matched my best score ever on Kokuryu with a free unit. This is absurd. Okay, so yeah, once again, if you didn't pull Rizer, I got nothing for you. I can't help you. Yeah, it's RNG if you get him or not. I was lucky enough to get him to EX2 from the pulls. That is not guaranteed. If you don't have him, you're out of luck here. It's really unfortunate that Gumi changed it to a single box instead of multi, where Rizer would have been guaranteed. Anyway, here's the rest of the party. So Rizer, you might be looking at him like, oh, 3,300 attack power. What is going on? This guy is gimp. No, don't worry about his attack power from gear. You need to focus on a few things. Killers and critical rate, your weapon type, and variance. So we're using a gun because Lightning does a 35 gun in peril. If you have the Silver Rifle, it's a two-handed gun with a 70% crit rate, which for 5 years was worthless. I sold mine when I needed more inventory room. Regrets, big regrets. Anyway, we're going to move past that. I don't have it, so the best two-handed gun I have just happens to be Lara Croft's gun. It doesn't need to be Lara Croft's gun. It can be any gun you want. Just your best two-handed gun or whatever is matching your current weapon in peril. Critical rate. There's a few critical rate sources gear. One of them is the 20-sided dice. It's a 20% critical rate each. So there's a 10% base critical rate and 20% per dice. So we're at 50%. And we're also getting 20% more from Core's TMR. He's a 4-star permanent unit. So that gives us the cap of 70% crit rate. That is the cap on crit rate is 70%. So we are at the cap, but the reason I'm kind of moaning about the Silver Rifle is because of that. Because I have to use 3 slots to cap the crit rate, these could be more killers. I could use, better gear, etc. Thankfully, I was able to cap killers by 300 Reaper and 300 Dragon. We're on Odin for 125 Dragon. It also gives 50 Reaper Killer. Make sure you spec into both. We're getting 100 from Sephiroth's card. And I should mention, the Vision card is critical. Not this card specifically, but the base attack power. Because Rizer has a 44,000 attack power buff. That scales on base attack and vision card base stat. So use a premium 125 card or Laura Croft's 125 card if you have it. If you don't have it, I think the next best is 115. Is there a 115? I think there is. But whatever the highest base attack power you can. Now, obviously, for this boss specifically, Sephiroth card MVP, because it also gives 100 Reaper Killer, which is very, very important. Things like you can notice here, I'm not even using any double hand at all. His gear attack power is not relevant. He had something like 280,000 attack power in that fight because of his store effect. So his base gear attack is not important. Do not worry about that. Killers, variants, and critical is what you're looking for. So here's the gear we use. And you need a source of chain up. Now, there's two sources of this in the game. There is Avalanche Tifa's TMR. There is also, if you want to make it even more foolproof, Oliveira's TMR, Prodigious Perform, and they do stack. So you can wear both of them. These both give chain up. Not chain modifier. This is not Savior's STMR or the Magister's gear. This is chain speed up. These do matter. It needs to be elemental chain speed up. The only two sources are Oliveira's TMR and Avalanche Tifa's TMR. You want to wear both if you can. I needed to put on more crit rate. If you have the silver rifle, then you can free up slots. And again, I could have worn Prodigious and Promise from Childhood, and it would have been better. But, I didn't have it. So there we go. So that's where we're getting all his stuff from. One more thing to keep in mind. No autocast whatsoever. Autocast will break your focus or your store effect. Same thing for those of you with Dark Rain and using his TMR. Any kind of autocast gear, it turns off focus. So Clash of Wills gear, do not wear it. It'll break because the autocast every turn of Clash of Wills will turn off your focus and it'll consume it and it won't work. Don't use autocast gear. Warrior of Light Barts and normal lightning are very important. They got to be in the front of the party. Barts in slot 1, lightning in slot 2. They got to be brave shifted, and they need to be dual wielding as many elements as possible. Now, obviously, the MVP here is Poppy's Passionate Paintbrush, which gives you 7 elements, and Deathbringer gives you the 8th. Well, not Deathbringer, any dark weapon in the game, but Poppy's Paintbrush. So there we go, Poppy's Paintbrush and a dark weapon. Bart also was using 1,000 Needles, and we didn't actually use it at the site, so forget that, on him. We used it on someone else. But yeah, there we go. So there was his thing. And then Lightning, just a mana reduction. Now, she's also using Thunderfall because it's a 130 Thunder in Peril. If you don't have this, you're going to deal less damage. It's a limited item. You can use just a 120 in Peril from her just kit. Other than that, some LB fill, because her LB AoE imbues, and that's what we did. Amplifies do not work on Rizer. For whatever reason, amplifies don't work on normal attacks. So, we use Shakira for the field effect, because the field is an imperil field and it does deal more damage. That does work on Rizer, the enemy in peril. If you don't have Shakira, you can replace her with a bigger killer buffer, like Yuna for her base LB, the Neovision's Yuna. For her 160 Reaper Killer, you can use EX3 General Celeste for 160 Dragon Killer, or you can use the 150 versions of like Ling for Undead Killer, Last Gen for Dragon Killer. Killers do work on him. Other than that, we have her with some Esper Fill so that we can get her to the field easier. And then again, dual wielding as many elements as possible. So we're using Fire and Dark on her, because for the counterattacks, we want to build that chain, that really, really short chain, and max it with counter gear. Come back to him. Venera is a 90% breaker. Any 90 breaker you want. So Venera, Laura, Crowned, Locke, or Hawkeye. All they're here for is the break. We gave her multi-element weapons. Lion Saber, it's a wind and earth. A Barra Scroll, it's a light and dark. Just mix as many elements as you can into your party. Nethicite to stop the magic attacks, and then some Esperfill. That's all she did. Bulwark's the Provoker. 100 ice resist. You don't need evasion. Passive provoke with the diadem. And again, elemental weapons. So, Necro Dagger for fire and dark. Another Lion Saber for wind and earth. If you don't have all these limited time multi-element weapons, 2 copies of Poppy's Paintbrush is technically enough, but I'm trying to show you alternatives if you don't have a double Poppy Paintbrush. Just as many elements as you can fit. So there we go. You don't actually need evasion, so this card is not important. I thought you needed evasion. The boss never does normal attack, so you don't need evasion. I think that was everyone. I think that was. Yeah, showed Rizer already. Oh yeah, and someone needs to be on an Esper with the Imperil spell for the all-element Imperil. That way we can get weakness damage credit. Because this imperils everything, because we're using like 500 elements, so you got to imperil all those elements. Just get the Imperil spell from an Esper. There you go. And then Bulwark is obviously very, very important because he gives us the counter chain and the modifier up. So he gives the 15x modifier to Rizer, and it also lets everyone else chain and cap that Rizer. So thanks again to Dream and Syzidus for the awesome idea. Based on my gear, this team cannot outperform my like serious tryhard team, which did like 13.6. Even with the max roll, this won't quite get there. At EX3, Rizer might, and I really don't recommend this for a meme team, but if you're like are super crazy, technically speaking, giving him Cactuars to level him to 130 and raise his base stats will give you a damage gain. I don't recommend that because Rizer is mostly for like kind of funny clears or goofy clears, but I mean it did 12.6 on the example clear. It could have gone as high as 13.5 with like perfect variance. But yeah, so if you just don't have, you know, Esther, you don't have Lara Croft, you don't have Kane, you don't have Graf, you don't have Angela, and you're like, everybody's doing 10 billion and more than me, I'm only doing 3 billion. Well, hopefully you pulled Rizer. He's got your back. That was a pretty budget Rizer build, too. He was mostly using like 3-star TMRs. Anyway, see you next time.